morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is David Meltzer, and I'm the Secretary General of GVF. Before asking our moderator to begin the webinar, I would like to take a minute to honor the memory of a GVF board member, colleague, and friend, Simon Gray, who was originally scheduled to be a panelist for this webinar. Simon unexpectedly passed away just prior to the planned February 24 webinar, and that is why we postponed the webinar to today. Throughout Simon's 23-year career at Eutelsat and 11 years as a member of GVF's board, Simon demonstrated a deep commitment to the industry and its ability to bring relief for those affected by disasters, as well as bring prosperity to communities around the world. One of Simon's last projects was to work on the European Union's plans for a LEO constellation. And we will not only miss Simon's contributions to this panel, but his wisdom, wit, and friendship. May Simon rest in peace. Thank you. I will now turn over the microphone to our moderator, Brent Prokosh. Brent?
Thanks very much, David, and welcome everyone. My name is Brent Prokosh. I'm a senior consultant with Euroconsult, a specialized space consulting firm. So thank you all for joining us for this new webinar in GVF's webinar series in association with Connectivity Business. So with no further adu, let me introduce our today's panelists. I'm joined by Reza Razulian, the Vice President of Broadband Satellite Services at Hughes, Deepu Pillai, the Manager of Strategy and Market Intelligence at SES, and Manik Vinakota, the Director of Commercial and Product Development for Telesat. As a quick introduction for the panel today, while SpaceX and Amazon have garnered much attention as new entrants in the NGSO business, traditional geostationary satellite operators have also been increasingly positioning themselves in NGSO broadband constellation ecosystems. Examples include SES doubling down on its O3b medium Earth orbit constellation with 11 new mPOWER satellites and a potential expansion into LEO. Hughes EchoStar investing in OneWeb's LEO constellation in concert with Eutelsat, who's made major investments in OneWeb to take a significant ownership stake. Telesat's bringing its Telesat Lightspeed LEO constellation to market. KTSat has invested in early stage GEO-MEO constellation from Mangata Networks. Both Viasat and Inmarsat have floated respective plans for LEO constellations, and Intelsat, after originally aligning with OneWeb, is also considering non-geostationary orbits for its future fleet architecture. So this shift towards NGSO is poised to drastically overhaul the market landscape for data connectivity services. Global capacity supply is poised to grow 20-fold by our estimates over the next 5 years alone to surpass 20 terabits per second, with NGSO accounting for roughly 90% of that total, up from just 10% in 2020. So today's discussion will cover a wide range of topics. So let's jump right in. Guys, we'll start with maybe a quick introduction about yourselves, the company, and your involvement in the NGSO landscape, including project milestones, recent events, and anything else you'd like to discuss up front here. Perhaps Deepu, you're first on my list, so please feel free to give us a quick background on yourself and SES.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Myself, Deepu Pillai. I work in the Strategy and Market Intelligence Department of SES. So SES is a global satellite operator. We operate over 70 geostationary and MEO satellites, providing connectivity all around globally. So we have over 50 geostationary satellites and about 20 MEO medium Earth orbit satellites, which are called currently the O3b satellites, or we call O3b classic satellites. So we started in the non-geo domain back in 2013 when we started launching the O3b classic satellites, and we started providing full service in 2014. Currently, we are working on our next generation satellite constellation that is called O3b mPOWER. This is also a medium Earth orbit satellites, 11 satellites. So we would be starting to launch these satellites this year, and we are expecting that these satellites will be coming into service by end of this year. So our vision as a satellite connectivity player is to kind of provide fully managed connectivity via both geostationary and MEO satellites anywhere in the globe. Thanks.
Thank you, Deepu. Manik, would you care to spend a couple of minutes introducing yourself and Telesat's project, please?
Thank you for having me on the panel, and good morning or good afternoon, good evening to all the attendees. Telesat, as most would know, is an established satellite operator, more than 50 years of operation globally. And we started our LEO program about 6 years ago, which is now called Lightspeed. And being an established existing GEO satellite operator, we had the benefit of designing a constellation that works and is based on what our customers need. We already serve a number of the markets, all the satellite markets that you typically expect. And Lightspeed is designed to ensure that all the different enterprise market segments needs are well met. I am part of the commercial team focused on the Lightspeed program. And as today we go along, looking forward to give you more updates and tell you more about Lightspeed.
Thanks very much, Manik. Reza, you're up.
Thanks, Brent. Hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So I'm Reza Rasulian with Hughes Network Systems. I'm responsible for mobility, strategy, and services, but also broadband satellite services, which includes the OneWeb commercial relationship with Hughes. Hughes has been around for quite some time. We've just celebrated our 50th anniversary. We're also a satellite operator, and our focus has been both the consumer space and the enterprise space. We're very pleased with a lot of the performance that we see out of our platforms globally. And frankly, we're delighted to be a key partner enabling the OneWeb constellation. We're both designing and developing the ground segment, but also the core module, which will go into every single terminal for the OneWeb constellation. So when we think about connectivity, we really, our goal is to connect, people, enterprises, and things. So that's our mantra, and really we're after connecting the unconnected. So both, Telesat, SES, Eutelsat, colleagues, we have a very similar mission. We're fortunate to be able to provide services and solutions to all satellite operators on the planet. And we're looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Reza. Maybe I'll just carry on with you, because you mentioned some interesting dynamics there about your involvement in the ground segment and on the service side as an operator as well. So basically, I'm wondering what kind of key factors, technology or market requirements led you to this finally jumping into the NGSO landscape. You've been operating GEO satellites now for over a decade and further back, a strong consumer business. But how did you guys weigh these factors and decide at this point was the right time?
Yeah, so we've been involved with OneWeb really since the inception. We do obviously believe in lower Earth orbit satellite systems. Frankly, before OneWeb, we enabled Globalstar and Iridium as well. So we've been in LEO for decades already. OneWeb happens to be the broadband LEO constellation that we're involved in. Our belief is that not one connectivity medium solves all of the connectivity needs. One, there's insatiable demand for connectivity. So we look at connectivity just like electricity. It's basically for school, work, whether it's financial or healthcare, governments need connectivity just like they need the electricity to do their business. So when we think about enabling our customers and users, we look at GEO satellites, but also, we've been providing hybrid networking also for over 10 years. So a lot of our enterprise users, not necessarily LEO, but LTE and other terrestrial transport methodologies together with our GEO satellite assets. So this hybrid approach we've started, over a decade ago, and we felt that OneWeb would be a great partner to enable LEO connectivity. And we've not only worked with OneWeb, but with SES, with their MEO constellation. We've had a number of great successes together. So again, we view a multi-transport world as the way to solve connectivity needs globally. And there's not one ideal solution for every type of problem you're trying to solve. So for example, I think folks do talk about the need for low latency, but the reality is over 93% of the global data is actually video, video streaming, social networking, and web browsing, which aren't entirely latency sensitive. So given that dynamic, we're keen on being in LEO as well as we are today, and we're able to offer services via our partnership with OneWeb. But we also do believe that GEOs are also a very important part of connecting the unconnected.
Thanks, Reza. So Manik, Telesat has been serving the unconnected with its GEO fleet in the past, notably in northern Canada, where connectivity issues are an acute problem still today, despite some of the advances in your GEO fleet that you've had. So can you discuss a little bit about these market, technology market requirements and these gaps between what your GEO fleet was capable of and where you'd like to go in the future? And maybe just a specific question, have we seen Telesat launch its last GEO satellite for connectivity needs with this massive undertaking that that Telesat Lightspeed is?
Okay, so I'll address the first question about what requirements we thought of that led us to Lightspeed versus another GEO. We serve, as you rightly mentioned, the unconnected, digital inclusive markets, Canada, but broadly elsewhere also. But we do serve via our service provider, the aviation market, the maritime market, the government defense market. And some common things that we saw across was the demand for not just more data, but more quality data was increasing. And quality data would mean better latency. Quality data would mean better resilience, because most often we are critical networks, so you cannot depend on something going wrong or bad. And then that was all from it. And then you have with the demand growing, the hotspot demand also start growing even more exponentially. Some very large communities need more and more data as people are getting more digitally active. But so do airport hubs and cruise ports and all these demand hotspots. And we saw that as a big challenge of trying to serve those high demand hotspots with even a very advanced GEO satellite. So the way the shape of the demand was growing and where it was going, the concentration of demand growing, we felt technically LEO constellation would be an ideal way to do it. Not every LEO is same. You need to design a LEO to the purpose you're trying to solve. So every LEO today, I think, has taken a different path to go about it. But we've chosen to make sure that we are an enterprise first LEO constellation. So designed to make sure that enterprise needs are met first. But even from a commercial perspective, people want more, but always for less. That's the dichotomy of data world. And we were very conscious that we will have to solve for the technical superiority, but at the same time, make it very, very economical versus not just any LEO, but versus any other satellite network, GEO, MEO, LEO. Otherwise, a business case wouldn't close. So these are factors, both technical and commercial, that went into getting to where we are with our LEO constellation. And your second question about have you seen the last of our GEO satellites launch? We launched our last satellite about 2 to 3 years ago, a big GEO satellite. And currently in our CapEx plans, we do not have any GEO satellites in our CapEx plan. Of course, for broadcasting is a different world, and GEOs are fit for that. But so for the data world, we don't have any GEO satellites planned.
Thanks very much, Manik. So Deepu, going back in time a little bit further back, maybe not, only slightly further back than Hughes with OneWeb during its original discussions, but you had a minority ownership stake in O3B at its beginning during the development phase and switched that to a full ownership stake along the way. and then really doubled down on this ecosystem with the order of 11 new mPOWER satellites. So what were the key kind of technologies or market gaps versus your customer needs that you found that MEO was particularly well suited to address? And how is mPOWER coming over the top and improving that further, or diversifying the number of markets that you can serve? So keen to hear about this background from you.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Brent. In fact, it helps us to tell the story like we have taken. When we launched the O3B back in 2013, so the main objective was we want to position differently in the connectivity value chain and to avoid the commoditization that was already started happening in the industry, like in terms of the capacity. So O3B in the medium Earth orbit, that was providing a true differentiation in terms of the low latency, high throughput connectivity, and you can have the beams that can follow the path of the user. So this, in fact, I would say opened up new markets, or I would say expanded the addressable market pie. For example, providing the cruise connectivity services, multiple gigabit connectivity to the cruise ships, which was not heard before. Then enabling the 3G, 4G connectivity in the Pacific Islands, where there was either only 2G connectivity or no connectivity at all. Then providing the ISR government connectivity to the troops deployed in the Middle East, Africa regions, fighting terrorism, enabling cloud connectivity. So these are all applications which were enabled by the O3B MEO that time, since we have a differentiating value proposition. So this was kind of a market pull, I would say, and the technology has also helped. There was both the technological advancements, like the standardization of the satellites, the cost efficiencies brought in by the reusable launch vehicles. So these all kind of helped, and this kind of made real a good opportunity for us. And when we decided to go for the O3B mPOWER, so we have been enhancing that capabilities multi-folds, what our current O3B systems has. So we could provide more flexibility, we could provide more throughput, and this would enable us to create new markets. So one of the example I would say is the recent deal that we closed with Reliance GEO. So GEO is a I would say a mobile operator which has grown from 0 to over 400 million subscribers in 5 years, and they would need somebody who can scale their capacity demand in the market. So we could offer them up to 100 gigabit of capacity in that Indian market, starting from if a site could grow from a few tens of megabit to a gigabit. So this kind of flexibilities that would enable to cater to new applications, as well as attract new customers, which hasn't seen satellite as a viable option for some of their needs. Yeah.
Great, thanks very much, guys. Well, one topic or theme that we've seen a lot coming through on our consulting projects list and on our market research findings is the potential impact of 5G as a driver and the associated universal service funding programs, some of them featuring low latency thresholds, and as well as just being able to meet the sheer capacity needs of these types of programs. Can you guys tell us a little bit about how you see your plays in NGSO improving your positioning in these types of mobile backhaul or universal broadband service funding programs? Reza, would you like to start off there?
Sure. So again, we feel that there's an insatiable need. So with 5G deployments, our intent is to leverage really the best connectivity to deliver to our customers, whether on the consumer side or on the enterprise side. So today we partner with pretty much every operator, not only in North America, but a number of operators globally as well, to deliver terrestrial services. So whether that be 4G, 5G, LTE, the whole spectrum. So again, we view the advent of terrestrial, but in addition to NGSO as complementary. So we would bring in terrestrial capacity if that makes sense for the customer, or we would bring in low Earth orbit capacity if that makes sense for the customer. And obviously, if GEO meets the need alone, we would bring in GEO. But again, we've had a lot of success with hybrid networking, and we also have SD-WAN technologies that we leverage. We have our own active technologies, which basically on a packet by packet basis, we can determine the right transport for the right application. So I think an analogy is, from a shipping perspective, if we think about connectivity like shipping, if you need to ship a series of cars, right? Would you ship those vehicles or let's say refrigerators via FedEx? Probably not. You'd probably take UPS ground. But if you're shipping 10 or 15 diamond rings as an example, you'd probably want to ship those by FedEx. So that's both in terms of what you're transporting, but also the need to transport that packet or that data in a time period. So like I mentioned, video is not latency sensitive. Facebook is not latency sensitive, kind of down to the user, because most of the content's video. So we're able to really on a packet by packet basis make the right decisions at the right time to transmit over the proper medium. And also I think it's important to note economics, right? Obviously these mega constellations are fantastic in terms of coverage. They do cover the entire globe for the most part, but the economics and launch and the number of satellites required in some cases, and the markets that these NGSOs are trying to reach are also very important to consider, right? So our view is let's solve the problem with the right medium at the right time.
Great, thanks, Reza. Manik, so on the topic of kind of universal service funding programs and the 5G ecosystem, in Canada, you guys have made good progress with the Canadian government on that front. And in the US, which isn't too far from home, there are a number of different national programs at the state level to seek improved broadband. So how do you see Telesat Lightspeed fitting into this kind of either mobile backhaul or kind of trunking ecosystem for with respect to 5G looking forward?
Yeah. That's a very important segment for us from Lightspeed perspective. But I think for putting Lightspeed on the side or LEO on the side, the only way that satellite would become a bigger part of the toolkit for mobile backhaul is when the satellite network becomes transparent to the mobile network. Today, we've been doing this for the past 50 years with all of us here, where we've been saying latency doesn't matter. You put accelerating devices, spoofing devices. Don't worry, your backhaul network will work. That was fine for 2G and 3G networks. CTOs don't want that security exposure anymore. Mobile network CTOs do not want it. When we did our LEO backhaul test, with the 5G backhaul test with Vodafone, the singular thing they wanted to test was, is the network transparent? I.e., will it work with any kind of encrypted traffic on their 5G new radio connecting to their 5G core? This is not about user experience. This is about security of the network. And the more we become transparent, the more we become easy to use, as if it was just another microwave or fiber network. That's what will drive the adoption of satellite networks. So with Lightspeed, at least, that's what we're focused on. There's a lot of industry jargon, plug and play, interoperability. You can put your favorite word to it, but that is what we're trying to achieve. And hence, we are designing a layer 2 network compatible with the Metro Ethernet Forum standards, because that is for backhaul. Layer 2 is what they want. They're not taking it out to the internet. And 5G is driving a lot of momentum because of that, not just in mobile backhaul, but Verizon is doing a lot of fixed wireless networks in the US, because that is a great thing for operators who don't have fiber footprint. So that is expanding the market. there's an explosion in enterprise private networks. Think mining sites, think resource sites, all these oil and gas platforms. Now they can run an enterprise grade wireless network for the first time. They don't need to run on Wi-Fi networks. So, and that has nothing to do with mobile network backhaul. That is all private network backhaul. So lots of use cases, but I think singularly we are focused on how does it become as transparent as possible and fits into a network.
Great, thanks, Manik. So Deepu, in the background, historically O3B is focused on the large aggregation trunks, let's say, in their terrestrial business in terms of the backhaul and trunking, or this kind of services to mobile network operators and terrestrial network operators. Looking forward at Empower, does this change a little bit of the types of sites that you can serve? Will you bridge down to smaller backhaul sites, and more generally, how do you guys see yourselves fitting in the 5G ecosystem? Is MEO's latency well suited for that versus LEO? So the floor is yours.
Yeah. So Brent, you're right. We would be with the Empower, we would be serving, a wide range of sites. As I said, starting from few tens of megabits to few gigabits. So these kind of sites, because of the beamforming, the flexibility that we could kind of provide that kind of connectivity. And another thing, in terms of the backhaul, there is a lot of regulations of having an in-country gateway. So the Empower system is also designed, not hardwired to the feeder gateway, but we can have flexibly place the gateway where the user needs. So this is also kind of an important thing, I would say, in the backhaul. And I think, when connecting the unconnected, as you rightly said, there is different means. You can have an aggregated means either via a mobile 3G, 4G broadband or a Wi-Fi hotspot solution, or a consumer broadband direct to home solution that is more predominant in the developed markets. But if you see, I am taking your numbers, Brent. So if you see, currently you estimate about 44 million satellite broadband users. So you can see that more than 90, 95, 96% of them are connected via the indirect way. And here what O3B has played a major role in the market, in lighting up the 4G networks in the Pacific Islands, and also in the different markets in Asia, in Latin America and Africa. So we would be continue to do that. And I think as Reza has kind of pointed out, having a GEO-MEO solutions also kind of give us a better right to win in certain markets where we can complement, the rural low TCO, low cost solutions, and also the Empower trunk solutions. For example, we have big connectivity projects coming up in the markets like Indonesia, Philippines, and also in the Latin American countries. So where here the hybrid connectivity or the multi-orbit connectivity solutions can play a major role. And regarding the 5G, I would say, there are three aspects of 5G that we are mainly concerned about. So the first one is, as I'm referring what Manik said, we have to make our network services 5G ready. And we as SES, as a global operator, we are lucky to kind of take part in the 5G trials. We are making sure that we are MEF standard ready. So our solutions are 5G ready solutions. And the second thing is, we are also embracing a lot of these 5G network technologies into our satellite and the ground network constellation. So we make sure that, the network function virtualizations, the software-defined networks, these kind of features are replicated into the satellite and the ground technology, so that we can leverage on those technologies. And the third is obviously the spectrum matters. So we have to make sure that we are not kind of threatening the K-band spectrum, where we had to share it with the MNOs, and also we had to make sure that where there is an opportunity to monetize the spectrum, we are doing that. So like the FCC broadband 5G spectrum D. So these three aspects, like I mean, these are the three main areas where we are taking we are analyzing the 5G opportunities here.
Great, thanks, Deepu. So guys, we touched on an important point involving, all of you have, involving the multi-orbit capabilities, so the kind of hybrid GEO-NGSO services. So we actually do have a question from the audience on this, so I'll remind you guys that we will be taking questions through the Q&A function, and also like to thank Proactive International PR for their sponsorship of this. But it's a good first question coming from Barry here, is about your respective plans for the LEO GEO user terminals, or the antenna types, and the typical prices for these units. So maybe Deepa, we'll stay with you here. Recently, we've in the past year or so, we've seen Empower, and even beyond that, make multiple investments in their terminal ecosystem, either on the flat panel front, or more recently with Intellian on the dual parabolic front. So are you able to share price points for these, and maybe some of the capabilities in terms of whether they're able to serve hybrid LEO GEO services from a single terminal?
Yeah, so I'm afraid I'm able to share the price points, but there could be kind of a significant improvement in the price points that we saw in the past to the what we are offering with our Empower kind of solutions, because then only we believe that we can address a lot of these markets which are kind of price sensitive, or kind of go for more of a backhaul kind of market rather than a big IP trunk kind of market. So there could be kind of improvements coming up in the price. And regarding the GEO-MEO platforms, so we have been, like, I mean, for Empower, we have chosen Gilat and iDirect as our platform partners. So we are also kind of making sure that these kind of works with our GEO-MEO solutions, and we are also developing an adaptive resource control software systems with Kitera. So this would be kind of can intelligently route the traffic based on the application, and also kind of provide the connectivity in a most economic way, and make sure that our system is utilized in a most economic way. So yeah.
Okay, thanks, Deepu. Manik, I've noted some recent announcements on the ground segment from Telesat's front as well. So some background on that, and then in particular whether there's a play involved between switching between GEO and LEO with these terminals, or whether it's solely dedicated to Lightspeed.
Yeah, going back to my previous remark about any network, LEO and LEO network, needing to be transparent to the end customer, and that cannot happen without user terminals being as transparent and as plug and play as possible for the different markets. So given we are focused on the enterprise market, and that will be all different facets, terrestrial, maritime, aero, and so forth, we are working on an entire catalog of user terminals. It will leverage both existing tested technologies like dual parabolic technologies, but so will electronically steered antennas feature in that portfolio. And like any enterprise solution, the customer will be able to select the right terminal for the right use case. So if you want a big trunking link, or you have a large cruise ship, yeah, you go for really large parabolic terminals. But then if you are a very small community, maybe you are better off with a small ESA or a very small parabolic terminal. So we recently announced Intellian to develop some reference terminals for the terrestrial market. We've announced COBAM for our landing station terminals, landing station gateway antennas, SATix5, which will be developing the core module for the modem in our user terminals. This is just the start. There's lots of ongoing discussions and more to come out publicly over the next coming time. The beauty with LEO that we see is even very small terminals can be addressed, at least with our design of LEO. So going down to even small, medium business jets that were off satellite today, but we can serve that market too. So it'll be a wide portfolio of user terminals, and we're certainly very, very mindful of the cost of the terminals, again, based on the use case. But we believe the entry-level terminals for the enterprise market would be a few $1,000s. That's our target.
Hey, thanks very much, Manik. That's great insights. And Reza, so maybe you can speak from your ground segment hat on as well as your service hat on about Hughes and the terminal plan. So understanding that you guys are providing the core modules for the user terminals, for the gateways for OneWeb, and then bridging over to potential kind of hybrid GEO-LEO services, how you foresee that within your terminal ecosystem as well.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. That's actually really great question. And I think as Manik pointed out, it really depends on the use case. So we're going to have a multitude of terminal types, anywhere from a maritime approach then to aero, but also for fixed verticals as well. So you really need the proper terminal at the right price point for the right market. And obviously, I think the industry is working hard to get to a low cost antenna that can serve both, premium consumers, I would say, as well as the enterprise world, but also leveraging the hybrid technology, making sure that you're using the best transport at the best time. So back in September, we did have a demo of a terminal that was doing GEO and LEO, and we were able to demonstrate the art of orchestration, because at the end of the day, to the user, it should be absolutely seamless. So, we've been able to, leveraging the antenna technology that's available today, we were able to demonstrate that hybrid model, and it was working, really fantastic. We were able to route the packets at the right time to the right transport. So, frankly, the terminal technology is key to unlocking access to many of these verticals. So we're investing a lot and really eager to help continue proliferating these really interesting technologies.
Thanks very much. So we have another question, another couple of questions that are swimming around the same type of topic. So we discussed interoperability within your fleets and within your flavors of satellite capacities and orbits. Now, has there been any move, or whether a push from customers to work towards interoperability between satellite constellations? So it seems to me like, I won't answer for you, but with each of you having your own plays and an abundant volume of capacity, I think your first option would be to serve all the needs within your own fleets for a customer. But have you had any customers interested in hopping or interoperability between satellite systems? So, there's been a lot of move towards, making sure satellite can address 3GPP standards, but still within each satellite system or operator, there's a silo there where they don't share the same baseband equipment. So, it's a question, maybe Reza, since we're bridging forward from our last question with you. Have you seen anything there? How do you see this situation evolving looking forward, or is it a need or not?
Yeah, that's also a really good question. So the Jupiter waveform, frankly, has been proliferated across pretty much every satellite operator, most of the major operators out there. So I think everyone on this call uses Jupiter as well in some part of their networks. But we've also created products together with partners that, for example, for an aero application, we collaborated with Inmarsat to do what was affectionately called GX Plus for North America, where we collaborated very closely to create a dual mod man that you'd switch roam, basically leverage the sheer capacity of the Jupiter assets, huge amount of capacity in North and South America, and then roam onto the Inmarsat global assets to create a seamless environment for aircraft. So that's one example of interoperability. Now, it's not exactly the same waveform because these systems have been created. But Hughes is always ready to collaborate and work with our partners to come up with really good solutions for the end users. So I think if it makes business sense, we'll look at it. We'll kind of lean in to create the solutions that the market needs.
Great, thanks, Reza. Deepu, so any thoughts on this topic within SES? And it can span over to cooperation with other satellite operators, or whether there's any use cases. I don't know if it's a cruise operator that would require or maybe request some kind of integration across different satellite networks, including different satellite operators.
You are right on spot, Brent. In fact, if you see our Scala platform, the customer can kind of bring in some third-party capacity, and so that they can operate that in the KU band maritime services to provide the connectivity all over the globe. So this is already kind of existing, and the open network platforms, this kind of lets users to do this. And in fact, you can also see some of our customers, like the satellite operators, they have a KA band network, so they also use a KA band, KU band antennas to kind of, especially on the government side of the business, to serve the military's aero services already. And I would say, this would be going on continuously, and there would be a huge take-up, because there would be a constant need to kind of complement the capacity in regions where there is a thin layer of capacity. So if there is an option where we can kind of partner with a operator to kind of concentrate your capacity. So this is a, I think this would be a major use case. But this is already happening. So yeah.
Great. Thanks very much, Deepu. So Manik, maybe it's a slightly different flavor on the same question, if you have any thoughts about what Reza and Deepu have mentioned. But one thing that strikes me is that Telesat Lightspeed has inter-satellite links, and there's some other peripheral projects like the Space Development Agency's proliferated LEO transport layer and things like that, where they're exploring interoperability between commercial and dedicated military systems. Would be one example of a potential play there. So any thoughts on this, or more generally on interoperability between these systems and networks?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, just out of the gate, interoperability comes with a cost, because the satellite industry is still not at the scale as the mobile industry that my phone doesn't show up, that we don't operate at, especially in the enterprise side, we don't operate at millions and tens of millions scale. So there are segments of the market, building on what Raza said, the aviation market. Most antenna products today, like ThinCom, is multi-orbit capable. You will expect every aero network to have a modem with at least 2 to 3 modems, and we are designing for that. We are not under the assumption that we're the only network that people will operate on. But aero is a high-end market, so, and then you want that and then pay for it. When you come down to just the other extreme end, we spoke a lot about connecting communities. I don't think they value so much interoperability because there's a lot of budget cost pressure. So get a very basic terminal which just works on one network, and if they want to switch, maybe they rip and replace. So it'll be a function of the economic business case. But from our perspective, yeah, for the right applications, we are like for the aero market, we do intend that the antenna systems will be multi-orbit capable, at least single band, but multi-orbit capable. When we step into the defense market, there are even multi-band capable antenna systems that we're exploring, because again, that's what the customer wants to pay for. Software-defined modems. The industry is coming together to create standards, but it's still not there. It's still a few years out. But we fully envision that, let's say 5-7 years from today, if you're having this conversation, the Lightspeed modem would be a software module sitting in a broader software-defined modem. So I think we all want interoperability. I think the customer will demand that. It's not what the satellite operator wants, but then we deliver better value, and hopefully customers switch to the best network. But especially for enterprise market, we have to design for interoperability, including the space relay example that you mentioned, Frank, whether it's optical relay or other kinds of RF relay. DoD, they've taken the lead. They have put out standards for the optical terminals, and kind of everyone is becoming SDA compatible, so to speak. So yeah, we think
So,
that's important.
So in terms of this kind of co-opetition, would you see these kind of standalone, whether it's the EU broadband constellation that's being floated or the US military's transport layers, or these friends or foes? It kind of seems like there's an opportunity potentially to mesh together with these systems to augment in certain cases, or how do you see these types of projects or other operators as possible partners for you in certain regions or otherwise? Historically in the HTS landscape, there's been a lot of co-opetition. Yourself and Hughes, for example, with payloads in Brazil, and these examples replicate themselves across most HTS operators in a way on the GEO side of things. So maybe bridging over to this kind of co-opetition question, how do you guys see either peripheral projects or existing GEO operators as kind of friends or foes in this landscape as we go forward?
I take it's to me because I was the last person.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll start off with that. I think unlike GEO satellite partnerships, which were, let's say, at an analog level where you could share payloads and things, I think the partnerships, if anything, will come down to on a service level because the constellation is going to be launched. You can't customize it. It's the global constellation. But then on a region by region basis or from a market basis, surely they might be in some areas where people have a better relationship or a better access to the customer. Because like Telesat, we traditionally have been, we're not direct to the market. We work with service providers and in some regions where the satellite operator is the service provider and they have a strong relationship, we will become part of their solution because the customer might need a multi-network. So yeah, I do see that happening.
Thanks, Manik. Deepu, maybe for you, have you guys seen any inquiries? We've heard a lot of GEO operators mentioning that they're interested in looking at the LEO-MEO landscape from the potential of investing in these systems or distributing the capacity. Anything there, or do you guys feel like you have all the tools you need to reach the end users globally with respect to O3b mPOWER's, almost, I think it covers 98% of the world's population. So do you need help or do you seek partnerships to improve your access to local markets? And maybe if you have any thoughts on some of these, either US projects where you guys do serve a lot of business right now that, they're bringing a similar capability to market potentially. Do you see this as an augmentation or, so just general thoughts on this kind of co-opetition theme?
Okay, I will answer your question, your second question, Brent. So on the peripheral project. So as you know, SES is part of a consortium that is kind of participating in this European Commission's LEO broadband initiative. That is a 6 billion project. For having a kind of sovereign LEO constellation. And so they are also kind of, the European Commission has also mentioned, they are open for a multi-orbit strategy. And we expect, there would be a bigger avenues for us to contribute being a GEO-MEO operator. And the mPOWER system is also kind of designed in certain way that, they can allow certain sovereign control for governments which want to kind of operate it independently of any commercial network. So this kind of opens up new possibilities for us because there could be certain users which do not want to have a kind of commercial interference, and they would like to have more an independent control. And the recent geopolitical events, and you would have seen a GEO single satellite being cyber attacked or jammed. So these kind of events also place a importance of having a multi-orbit or a proliferated constellations capabilities to kind of to counterattack these kind of threats. And regarding the first question about competition with the other satellite operators, so we have been also kind of doing certain of this kind of competition in the markets globally already, but we are also kind of in talks with certain regional operators or country-wise players, because I think for many of these smaller players, having a global constellation doesn't close the business case. So they would obviously would like to kind of partner with certain global constellations who can provide the capacity for that particular project or for a particular country where we can meet the demand, and they can kind of co-invest or share the services. So yeah, so this is our take. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Deepu. So Reza, I mean, Hughes has been pretty active in leasing payloads from fellow GEO operators, but you know, as Manik kind of alluded to, these were really just you know, pretty simple sharing schemes. Gets a little bit more complicated now. OneWeb already has a couple of operators as investors, yourselves in Eutelsat. How do you guys see that prospect looking forward? Are other satellite operators on deck for distribution, maybe even bridging over to how Hughes sees itself distributing this capacity in certain markets or in partnership with other operators?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, we have a long legacy of working with satellite operator partners to really get the right capacity for our customer base and augmenting our capacity, whether it be through joint ventures, like in the case of Yasat and YaClick, or hosted payloads, like in the case of the deals we've done with Telesat and Eutelsat. So I think when we think about OneWeb, it's a very similar approach. You know, our goal is really to meet and exceed our customers' needs, right, and to provide them the best possible connectivity solution. And it's not limited to just one transport or one, let's say, relationship or partnership. I think we've got the scale and the tools, the back-end tools required. You know, I think a very important point is that, you know, creating these managed services is extremely complex. It requires, you know, significant staff, significant investment, significant back-end tools and processes to ultimately fulfill the customer need. So, you know, we've built these back-end systems over decades of providing connectivity solutions to our customers. So when we think about, you know, bringing in LEO via our OneWeb relationship, you know, we're creating the ground segment, we're creating the core module, and we're also a distribution partner. So we're very well poised to leverage all of the Hughes capabilities, whether it be AI, ML that we're very active in, SD-WAN and hybrid technologies that we're a leader in, security, you know, I think has been mentioned, but the lens that we look at security is through our customers' eyes, right? So every solution that we bring to the table is completely engineered, right, to meet the customer need. So yeah, I mean, we're fortunate. We're in a really good place to help our customers, leveraging these relationships that we have, leveraging the technology that we've developed, not only, for example, in the OneWeb case, but also in our Jupiter environment, and creating baseband systems as well. So I think it's healthy cooperation with our satellite operator partners, whether it be a hosted payload that we acquire, or whether it be a service that we buy and we package for our customers, really providing the value-added services over top of what's been placed.
Okay. Yeah, so thanks, Reza. We do have a question from the audience, continuing on the theme of competition, and maybe Reza, while we were just discussing it, popped to mind that you'd be a good place to start here. The question is about new entrants, and the elephant in the room being, you know, Starlink and Amazon Kuiper. These players are targeting more narrowly at the beginning the consumer market, which we've identified as potentially being a bit less sensitive to latency because of the shape of the traffic is predominantly video for these applications. So how do you see, you know, your current GEO business with respect to that competition coming in, and looking forward, how OneWeb is differentiated potentially from Starlink, either in strategy or technology? And you know, the long tail of that question was about, you know, what what customers are latency sensitive, basically, and how big is that market?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll start off by saying that, competition is always good, right? I think competition keeps all of us on our toes and creates an ecosystem where we're all innovating. Now, to specifically kind of point out, there's a lot of demand, right? There is significant amount of demand if we look at the consumer broadband business. And the truly unconnected, despite the terrestrial proliferation, there's still demand for satellite services and satellite connectivity. As I pointed out earlier, you have solutions for every vertical. So when we think about the consumer market, we feel very comfortable that having our GEO capabilities looking at a potential hybrid solution is probably the best way to go, versus putting all of our eggs in one basket, right, so to speak. So, and then kind of taking a step back and looking at the market as a whole, you'd have to launch a lot of LEO satellites to serve the demand in the consumer space. And we think there's better ways, there's other ways of serving that demand. You asked about strategy, of certain LEO operators. I think the LEO operators that are thinking about the higher end uses like government, mobility, and other kind of portions of LEO, high-end enterprise or enterprise, where there's no other good connectivity. We do believe in that. We do, and again, we would still augment with the best asset, right? In our view, it's not just LEO. LEO is fantastic for many of those use cases, but it happens that we think GEO also complements very well, or vice versa. LEO complements GEO very well. So, there is a lot of demand out there. Obviously, the LEO space is a very capital-intensive exercise. So we're watching that very, very closely. We're obviously investing in OneWeb as well because we do believe in their model, right? We believe that they're very focused on certain target verticals. They're very meticulous in the way that they're delivering the bits and the bytes that they're delivering. And Hughes brings a really interesting, not only from a technology perspective for the ground segment and the core modules, but also from our managed service capabilities globally. We really bring the right package, if you will, to bring the OneWeb solution to the market as a distribution partner. So we're very proud of that. And again, we're very open, right? So if a customer needs something very specific, we've got access to pretty much the Rolodex of the right strategies, technologies, and all the back-end systems to deliver a good, productive service. And we can't forget about customer service, right? You can't underestimate the amount of work it requires, not only for the consumer side, but also on the enterprise side, to make sure that we're delivering to our customers' expectation and we're delivering a good service, and so forth. And capacity is also really important, right? So we're fortunate, we have assets that are completely full. We're launching Jupiter 3 later this year, which will bring even more capacity to North and South America. So we're going to enjoy, significant amount of growth with respect to that launch. And look, we're going to continue looking at opportunities to meet our customer needs.
Great, thanks, Reza. And I'll just flag for the audience that we're able to stay on a few extra minutes to hear from Manik and Deepu on this topic. So maybe Manik, in terms of the competition from Starlink, you guys seem to have segmented away from the direct-to-home consumer segment that Starlink is strongest in. How do you see the differentiators of Lightspeed, and where do you see potential either market focus creep from Starlink overlapping maybe with some of your key markets, and how do you feel like you have a leg up in those?
Okay. I think every LEO that's being built right now, whether OneWeb, us, Starlink, Kuiper, they will all come after the enterprise market because anyone who's created a LEO business case, you have to have the enterprise market. Consumer market is not enough. OneWeb made that pivot, and Starlink and Kuiper also will be addressing that market. I agree with Reza. I mean, we're talking about a global market, and there's no industry in the world where there's only one player takes it all. It just cannot work that way. It cannot work that way. But there's a natural limit as to the number of LEO constellations that can viably technically work because of spectrum associated and so forth. So there'll be an upper bound, but all the four LEOs, to the best extent I understand, have very different designs. We have, like I said, targeted the enterprise segment. So we made sure ISLs were there as part of the baseline design. We have beam hopping so that you can serve the mobility market as well as high concentrated communities. So you have an aircraft over the Atlantic Ocean, you still need to serve it with the same high degree of service. Going, and I mentioned about aligning with MEF interface standards and so forth. And it's not just about the technical nature of the constellation, it's also how your channel model is. Some LEO operators are going fully direct to the market, but we are going to work with local partners. So if you think of a matrix from technical and commercial differentiation, I think we treat ourselves as an enterprise first, which is channel first also, and other LEOs may fall somewhere on the spectrum. That's our view.
Great. Hey, thanks for that, Manik. Deepu, any thoughts on this, the competitive landscape with respect to new entrants, whether it be Amazon or Starlink, and your product market fit basically within this ecosystem?
Yeah, I think some of the points I was planning to talk is already covered by Manik and Reza. So, like, I mean, all LEOs are not kind of created equal. Like, I mean, there are architectural differentiations, but as Manik has rightly said, like, I mean, everyone has to kind of target these high premium markets to make the business case for their constellations. But we are kind of believing that our architectural strengths, like, I mean, ability to provide multiple gigabits of uncontained capacity, the flexibility features like changing the forward return ratios, beamforming, beam hopping, and the ability to place the flexibly the gateway where we need. So these kind of things, features would give us a higher right to win in markets like which need this high throughput and high flexibilities. For example, the ISR applications, that is more both manned and unmanned ISR. Then the cruise ships, obviously, also the naval vessels. We are seeing a good traction, especially after the start of the COVID. The US US naval vessels kind of taking up the capacity. Then also, like, I mean, in the mobile backhaul and the IP trend applications. And I believe that, I mean, we would be also able to leverage on the services and the channels that we have built over the O3B classic constellations. That would be kind of giving us a kind of an advantage as well. For example, like many of our customers, we are having talks to kind of moving on to Empower. Some of them will be continuously using Empower and the classic. So this would be kind of an advantage, I think. Like, I mean, this is also kind of a difficult to build advantage. Like, I mean, we have built it over a period of, I would say, 7-8 years. Even the terminals, the services, making sure that the SLAs are met. So these kind of things would be helping us. And obviously, like, I mean, being a GEO player with landing rights and access to the spectrum in and also the subsidiaries in different markets, these all will be kind of playing an important advantage, which many of these new players are facing challenges right now. Like, I mean, if you see many of these press releases coming up, some countries denying access, some countries asking them to stop the pre-order. So all these kind of things they have to undergo.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much, gentlemen. This was a great discussion today. We've reached the end of the time allotted for this webinar. I'm sure we could continue going, but we'll cap the discussion today. So thank you all again, Reza, Manik, and Deepu. We really appreciate your time. And for the audience, thanks for sitting in with us today. You can catch a recording of this and previous webinars on gbf.org. And please join us for the next event, Comms on the Move in the Supply Chain, which I believe is planned for the 31st of March at 3 p.m. UK time. And just remember to switch your clocks. Daylight savings time, I believe, is this weekend in some areas. So gentlemen, thank you again. And this concludes the webinar for today. Thank you.